Well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for taking the time here to join us this afternoon or morning, depending on where you're dialing in from, as we'll get into here in introductions in a moment. But to tee it up, what you're tuning in for is a product demo here of a new feature we've set to release at Elate called Insights, which we're incredibly excited about. The kind of journey leaders of today's session are going to be Ross, who's the director of sales here at Elate. He's going to be walking us through a demo and a live version of Insights, kind of getting into the intricacies of how this comes to fruition within our platform. And then my name's Brooks. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO here at Elate. And in addition to a demo of the feature, we also wanted to start with the big picture around why. Why is this a product that we're really excited about as an organization? How did this come to pass? What are some of the details that went into us building this feature to begin with, and how do we hope that it serves the customers that we work with here as an organization? So we're going to be your guides here through today's conversation. And one of the things I will note, we will have a Q&A at the end, but as we're going through, especially the demo itself, please don't hesitate to drop any questions into the chat. Either Ross or I or Tim, who's our VP of marketing behind the scenes, we'll try to make sure we get to those time permitting. So we're expecting today's session to be about 30 to 45 minutes. And with that, let's go ahead and get rolling. So a little bit about why Insights is something that we're excited about and the intent behind building it to begin with. For us, one of the things that we set out to achieve in building Elate from the onset is how do we bring together long-term vision with tactical execution. From the pain that we felt as strategy and operations leaders firsthand at organizations as large as Salesforce and SAP, down to a 5-person startup that we had to upscale to a couple hundred folks. One of the challenges we know is ever present for strategy and operations leaders is that ability to guide the direction of an organization, to a certain extent see around corners, help to bring together a lot of cross-departmental initiatives and work that impacts multiple areas of the organization itself. And so in building the Elate platform, we wanted to create a unified view, bring together all the moving pieces throughout an organization, again, serving as that connective tissue, so to speak, between where do we want to go and how we get there. While a lot of that is facilitated in creating a unified view, one of the things that we've always had at the forefront of the way we think about our product and the features that we build is how do we continue to empower strategy and operations leaders with an ability to build more cohesive, more durable plans from the onset, and then ensure that they're executing upon those plans and making the right decisions along the way. And so Insights really serves in kind of 3 capacities. The first of which is, how do we enable folks to build better plans? How do we allow them to see around corners or frankly, pressure test as they're going through that process, whether it's working with our team directly or through Insights, the ability to understand where do the risks lie as we're creating the plan. But then once a plan is created, we know that as strategy and operations leaders, no great plan looks the same at the end of the year as it did at the beginning of the year. It's going to evolve to meet the needs of the current landscape. It's going to meet the needs of what the business is facing. And so Insights for us is the way in which we want to identify risks and really give course correction along the way. And in that same vein, the last component of this is how do we take proactive action? We talk a lot about at Elate the intent behind bias to action, where it's not just surfacing something or a data point, but it's sharing what do we do with this? What is the context behind why this piece of information is so valuable, and how do we do something about it? And so with those 3 areas in mind, the way to think about Insights is that idea of how do we move faster and go further. Every, as I mentioned, plan at the beginning of the year is going to evolve over the course of the year itself. It's going to look different from the beginning to the end. And one of the ways that we conceptualized our Insights is knowing that if this blue line is the plan itself that we set out to achieve at the beginning of the year, there are really important inflection points over the course of the year where our plan could be moving in one direction, or with the proper intervention, we can get it back on track, moving up and to the right, so to speak. The idea is that even when we experience those dips, we're mitigating the impact of those dips and ensuring that we're course correcting and veering back on track as we're seeing those plans move in the wrong direction. And so as Ross is going to walk through within the demo itself, the intent behind insights is that we're not only surfacing the notifications and the alerts throughout the plan in the course of the year, we're allowing you to take action and to track what is the impact of that decision point on the trajectory of the plan itself. And so as we think about, again, that idea, we aren't going to come in and say, we know your strategy better than you. If you say, look, I want to, as an example, if we make the analogy of like a journey of going from Indianapolis to Chicago, we're not going to tell you, no, you don't want to go to Chicago. You want to go to Cleveland. Instead, what we're going to do is come alongside really as a co-pilot, ensuring that as you're on that journey from Indianapolis to Chicago, we're sharing along the way when there's an accident that we need to course correct on, or when we potentially need to get off on a specific exit to avoid construction that's going to delay us 3 hours, or maybe we want to avoid tolls along the way. The idea is that we're coming alongside and helping to surface that proper course direction as you're setting out your strategy itself. And so this kind of shifts us into, well, how do we think about insights? And Ross, I'll kind of turn things over to you because I know this is going to influence the demo itself.
Yeah, thank you, Brooks. And to Brooks's point, before we get into the demo, we wanted to give insight into how we think about that strategic planning journey in itself. And so for those that are familiar with Elate, whether you're a customer or you've been exploring the solution with our sales team, this nomenclature in these 3 phases might be familiar to you. But for those that aren't, the way that we think about strategic success falls within the 3 phases of plan, execute, and report. And I think the unique thing about these 3 phases is A, that they're cyclical. They're always growing and evolving along that journey, as Brooks had mentioned. But B, the success of one phase is very dependent upon the other phases. And so as we think about real life examples, right now we're in the season of planning, right? It's October, November. A lot of our customers right now are heads down thinking about their plan for the upcoming year. And so as we focus on that part of the journey, we know there are areas within that phase that directly impact our ability to go execute that plan once 2025 hits. So the idea of insights is how do we be really intentional about these 3 phases and recommend, as practitioners within the space, areas of risk that could potentially impact that next phase. And so a lot of what we'll see today in the demo and a lot of the real life examples we'll go through is how do we define what an insight looks like? And then when it becomes a risk, when it becomes something that should prompt that bias to action, what's the way in which we surface that information to our customers so that they can take immediate action and to Brooks's point, see the success of that action, see how it is going to impact that next phase of the journey. So I'm really excited to get into the demo itself. I'm really excited to show how this feature, we believe, overlays across all 3 areas of this journey, and we believe will take our customers to the next level when it comes to finding strategic success within their plans. Before we get into that, I think what you'll realize is a lot of what we've built today with Insights comes from the fact that we have worked with thousands of strategy and operations leaders over the course of our journey here at Elate. And so much of what we have built within Insights has been really intentional based on those interactions, based on those relationships, and based on what we know translates into strategic success. And I think before we get into the demo, it's important to take a step back and learn a little bit about how we got here, learn a little bit about the information that we've been able to contextualize that has been a major catalyst to the release of features in itself. And I think Brooks is probably the best person to take you through that because he is a strategy leader by trade. And this is a feature that he's been spending a lot of time on. So Brooks, before we get into the demo, do you mind taking everyone through kind of how we arrived here and what that means for them?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think even in referencing back to this, the idea of creating a holistic plan oriented around the 3 phases that Elate is built on: planning, execution, and then the reporting, to evolve that plan and make it more dynamic versus static, is also tied into not only how we built the insights themselves, but also in the data points that we wanted to look into to understand how to create these insights. For us, there's a lot of data that Elate has the benefit of getting access to. If you think about the thousands of strategic plans that we've now had the opportunity to navigate and go on that journey with strategy and operations leaders, we have an orientation of taking not just what we call themes or what an organization might call pillars, those annual, this is what we're trying to achieve for the year itself. We go all the way from that level down to the very tactical, what outcomes or outputs are we driving towards, and everything in between, quarterly objectives. And so if you think about all of the data points, all of that information that we have access to and that we've been able to see what works and what doesn't, it's allowed us to create kind of our own rules around what does success look like? What is the way that we best enable our plan from the onset to ensure that we're delivering on the goals with a level of conviction and a degree of confidence that for most organizations, they don't have today. If you've been a part of any webinar about strategic planning or with us in the past, you probably know the stat that 67% of strategic plans fail. The result of that is oftentimes we're creating bad plans to begin with that aren't revisited or aren't reviewed on an ongoing basis. And so what Insight Surface is all of that data that we've contextualized, that we've been able to say, look, from what we see as success within a plan and what we see as potential risk, how do we ensure that that's bringing to life those notifications, those alerts that allow, again, strategy and operations leaders to see around quarter and to identify those bends before they become breaks, or even to double down on the areas of opportunity when we're seeing success that we expected at the onset. And so the way that we take all of that data, translate it, both objective data, but then also the subjectivity that we have from working with thousands of strategy and operations leaders, that's really the depth behind insights and how those are going to be coming to life within the platform themselves. So we're going to, at some point here, transition into the platform. Ross, is there anything else that you would touch on here before we dive into things, though?
No, I'm excited to show everyone what we got.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here as Ross goes ahead and pulls up the Insights feature, and we'll continue and dive in.
Righty. I need access to share. So Brooks or Tim.
Yeah, I think I should be able to do that. Oh. There we go.
Righty. Fantastic. I know Brooks had mentioned this from the onset, but as we go through the demo, if there are questions that come through, please do submit them. We will do a formal Q&A at the end of this, but my preference as I go through some of these live demos, if you're thinking it, if it's something that's top of mind for you, I'm sure someone else is. And the more that we can foster that level of conversation and collaboration, I think the better it is for everyone in the audience. So before we get into the Insights feature itself, for those that maybe aren't familiar with the Elate platform, we wanted to orient you around just structurally how we see strategies coming to life for our customers, because I think that will in turn really shed light into how Insights provides impact for those customers. So what you're looking at is generally just a homepage within our software itself. When we ask our customers to define that journey, as Brooks mentioned, from Indy to Chicago, what we really are hoping to find from them is what's your end destination, right? Where do you want to take this organization, and how does your strategy impact that? So a lot of times that takes form in mission, vision, values, right? This is our destination. This is where we're going. But even maybe more important to just that end destination, it's what's the route that we care to go down? What are the things that we are going to prioritize within our strategy this cycle, this quarter, this year? And for us, those come to life in what we call themes. So oftentimes themes are big categories of work. They're cross-functional in nature. And when we get to the end of the cycle, these are the areas that we're going to be measuring and reporting on to our execs, to our board of directors, to say, here's how successful we were in these areas of our strategy, and here's the why behind that success. And so structurally, this is how a lot of times that plan on a page or that strategy comes to life within Elate. To take it one step further, I want to toggle over to what we think about as our hierarchy view, because these themes, these categories of work don't just happen. There's a lot of day-to-day, week-to-week execution that your teams, your departments, your leaders are focused on in order to make these themes a reality. In order to become a market leader in a specific segment, you need to have core revenue goals or growth goals. And those can sometimes take form in an objective, which then can trickle down or cascade down into your departments and the work that's being done. So again, I think this is really important just to level set on structurally, how does a strategy come to life in the Elate platform? Because it's going to start to make sense for how insights then recommend risk within the strategy itself. So from here, now that we have a good home base for how you think about a strategy living within the Elate platform, I will toggle over into why we're here today, what people came to learn about, and that is our insights feature. So it will have its own unique tab down here on the left-hand side. So for those that are familiar with Elate, if you're an admin, it will be available to you right within your platform. By clicking into the Insights tab, this is going to give us a direct look into some of those core recommendations, those bias to actions that, based on that information, that data we're collecting, we know have a core impact to the success of your strategy. So first and foremost, we want to highlight the risk profile. When we think about risk profile, these are the potential insights within your strategy today that, if not addressed, could potentially drive risk within succeeding within that strategy, right? And so these that you're seeing right here are the core insights that we're driving for our practitioners, for our customers. Each insight will have a unique threshold, something we'll talk about more here in a second. And when it passes that threshold, that's when we want to surface it as a risk. So let's put this into a real life application. Again, I'll go back to the season that we're in right now, which is planning. And as our customers are really heads down with their executives, with their teams, creating their plans, those plans will ultimately be migrated into the Elate platform, built within the Elate platform. If we recognize that through that building effort, there are objectives that we just identified on the hierarchy tab that are not connected to a theme, right? They have no connection point to those big categories of work. Well, we know that's a risk, right? We know that there's a whole slew of problems that can come with that when we have what we call island objectives, areas of your areas of your business that are being prioritized, but don't connect up to the strategy itself. And when it passes that threshold, we're going to say, Mr. or Mrs. Strategy Leader, this is a risk, right? We know that it's critical to ensure your team is executing towards the strategy, that you're all in the same boat, rowing in that same direction. And if people don't feel like they're a part of that journey, it has a lot of potential risk associated with it. So now that we've identified it, now that it lives within your risk profile, that's when we want to prompt that bias to action. So by clicking on Take Action, what I'm able to do is go directly into what we're calling our Action Center. And this is going to really drive efficiency when it comes to mitigating some of those risks that live within your plan itself. So first and foremost, let's say you are the chief strategy officer, the chief of staff, or you're the person that's overseeing strategy in itself. And maybe, some of these were just an oversight on your end. Maybe, it was just a user error or you overlooked it, and that's okay, right? We can come in and choose, hey, there's 3 or 4 here that were on me to connect to a theme. I'm able to, right within the Action Center, click those, find the theme I want to connect them to, hit update. Easy peasy, right? The efficiency of connecting them to that theme has been mitigated. The second piece, though, is maybe we want to start to empower your leaders, the leaders of sales, product, finance, people that are saying, this is my objective, this is my priority, and say, that's great that this is your priority. How does it connect to a theme? How does it connect to what we know the board and the executive team care about? Oftentimes, this is a manual process. You're tracking them down, you're calling them, you're doing drop-bys on their desk, and it's not something that's traditionally pretty efficient. So within the Action Center itself, we're able to click on all of these objectives, message these leaders directly, say, here's why this is an important piece based on the season that we're in. Here's the reason for here's the reason for why it's important for you to do now, and send that directly to them. So again, this is just one of many examples for how within Elate, we're going to identify, flag a specific risk that lives within your plan, and then come in and recommend that bias to action. All righty. The second piece of this is starting to measure and recognize what was the impact of that action. And if by toggling over to the Analyze tab here, right within the Insights feature, what we're able to see is when, at what point in the calendar year did we as a solution surface that risk? And if action was taken, what was the result of that action? So you're starting to leave a paper trail of, hey, here's when risks happen, and here's how our proactive action mitigated that risk, and also starting to see the success of that. So you're able to see, you know, on October 15th, October 22nd, this is when we identified them as a risk. This is when Leslie, who's our champion, took action, and here's the results of that action. Now that we have 0 objectives that are no longer what we would call island objectives, everything is connected to a theme, and thus everyone should have clear insight, clear understanding, I should say, for how their work ladders up into the holistic strategy. All right, I'm throwing a lot at you. I'm starting to see a few questions come through, which is great. Again, just a quick reminder, if there are questions that you have for how this feature operates and anything that you want to us to double click into, please throw it into the question chat. Moving forward beyond just the risk, one of the things that we want to identify is what we would call indicators, right? These are insights that we are always having line of sight into. To Brooks's point earlier, that we're kind of helping you see around the corner. These are the areas that we know are really important to strategic success, but they haven't passed that threshold. We would not constitute them as a risk. We don't think it's something that requires your immediate action, but we want to let you know that we're always having line of sight into them. And we want to see, you know, where they're at today. So again, they haven't passed what we would consider that risk threshold. But you should always have insight into what are the things that we're looking at in the platform, and have direct access to dive deeper into all of these insights here.
Yeah, and maybe even the only thing to note on these indicators piece is we want to empower folks before, as Ross alluded to, they become risks. And one of the, as an example here, one of the key drivers we see in any successful plan is being able to orient around outcomes, not simply outputs. And so being able to know within the plan and its totality, how many outcomes do we have? What are the objectives? And frankly, how are we measuring success on those? And so if we can alert folks as that plan's being built and allow for, again, easy interaction and collaboration across teams to define those outcomes themselves, rather than just setting an objective that is complete, not complete, allowing for that facilitation to occur in real time in a collaborative way, and in a way that allows folks to understand the bigger context and how their objectives interact or impact other team members, is what we're trying to facilitate and trying to enable for strategy and operations leaders. And so this is an example that's near and dear, because we just had probably one of the best QBRs that I've seen in an organization that's really shifted from more output or just progress project-based planning to outcome-driven orientation of saying, here is what success looks like and how we ensure that plan is built in a way to facilitate that.
Great point. As you were going through that, Brooks, a question came through that I think is an important question, and it's rooted around how we define thresholds. It's rooted behind, you know, what takes an insight from it just being an indicator to a risk, and how do we define thresholds? The question was directly, can we customize the thresholds? And the answer to that is absolutely, right. We think it's really important for you guys to have full customization, not only into how we define thresholds, but also how we start to define these insights, and certainly, you know, how we get notified within them. So that's what the management tab over here is for. So it was a great segue. In this management tab, you'll see the insights that you're going to have available today within your platform, and you're going to have the ability to enable them, to turn them off, to define your notifications, all those things. And so again, we'll just use the one example that I clicked into, objectives that are not connected to a theme. By clicking into this, you'll see full customization. If you want to disable it, if you want to turn the notifications on or off, you can change the definition. If you don't call them themes, maybe you call them pillars. You can, you know, change the nomenclature within how we define the title of this insight. But most importantly, to the question that was asked, we can change the threshold, right? If we have strategy leaders that believe, and probably properly believe, that there should be 0% of your objectives not connected to your theme. We're very much in agreement to that. And if that's a threshold that you want to change down to 1%, so that anytime an objective is created where it's not connected to a theme, you should be notified as a strategy leader. And that should be something that should prompt action, whether through you or through your objective owner. And so there is total customization within these insights to define your threshold, and certainly turn on the notifications related to that threshold once it's defined. Good question, and thank you for that. All righty. As a last piece here to tie a bow on this demo, I actually want to revert back to the hierarchy view in itself. Because as we've gone through the insights tab, and I think, Brooks would agree, with any feature within Elate, a big piece of it is how are we surfacing it to you at the right time, right? How are we giving it to you so you can drive action and be proactive towards it throughout your journey? And certainly you're always going to have access into the insights tab. But one thing that I think you'll notice as we looked at this prior is that insights designation will live on the objective itself within the hierarchy tab. So that as you are executing your plan, as you're going through the journey of plan, execute, report, the more times we can surface up insights in the moment, in the here and now, to drive conversation, to drive that bias to action, to drive proactive outlook, the better it is for your strategy, the better it is for seeing success within Elate itself. So if we know that this objective, increasing new business, is core to what we're focusing on right now, and its child objectives, the three that fall underneath it, have gotten worse, not improving, right? Have trends that are living within them. Those are insights that we want to know. And so it having direct connection in this hierarchy view so that right, in the here and now when you're looking at this, what should drive your attention so that you can navigate from here directly to the action center to learn more, to then prompt that biased action. The better it is for you, the better it is for us, and hopefully the better it is for your strategy itself. All right, there's one more question that came through that I want to address, and then we can open up to any formal Q&A if there is any. The question that just came through was around our advanced reporting feature. For those that are familiar with advanced reporting, it's one of our most adopted features within the platform. Certainly don't need to go through a demo of that specific feature today, but the question was, are we able to surface these insights into advanced reporting? And the direct answer to that is yes, absolutely. Anytime we're able to take these insights and even the action that was taken within the insight. So when we surface it to you and action was taken, we are able to analyze the impact of that action. Those are things that we want to directly correlate into an advanced report, a custom report that you can then share with your executive team, with your board of directors, with those that have and need line of sight into your strategy. So because a lot of why we built insights is so that you can make proactive decisions to mitigate risk, it is a big piece of what we're trying to drive here by incorporating that into the advanced report, right? It's a big piece of the overall solution so that the people that undoubtedly are making these decisions on when to pivot, when to persist, the why behind that, have all the information they need to make the appropriate decisions. And so a lot of what will be surfaced through insights and the risks that we're recommending can absolutely be directed and routed into an advanced report. And of course, as I just mentioned, even when action is taken within those insights to see what the success of that action was, we'll also be able to be routed into those advanced reports as well. From a demo perspective, I think we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the reason behind insights. We've identified what constitutes risk versus indicator. We looked at the bias to action in our action center and the ability to efficiently drive that action right within the Elate platform. And so thank you guys for kind of giving us a space to communicate, the feature here today. And Brooks, is there anything that you add or anything that you feel like I missed related to insights?
No, do you mind switching me over to the host here, Ross, as we kind of wrap up here?
Sure. Yes, give me a second. Okay, should be good.
Awesome. All right. So Ross, appreciate you walking us through that. And obviously for us and the way that we think about insights and the way that we think about, frankly, surfacing this information, the intent is that we're sifting through all of the signals that are being placed throughout the organization to make or bring to light the things that we need to care about as strategy and operations leaders. I think one follow-up to that note on that you were just speaking to, Ross, around insights and even tying those into advanced reporting, as we think about the future state for us, it's continuously making sure we're surfacing the right information to the right stakeholders at the right time. And so as we press into the new iterations of insights and even the incorporation of thinking about how these are tied into reports, or how in a future state we're auto creating certain reports based on insights, the intent is that the information is being made readily available to share to those right stakeholders. One other question we got is just kind of like, how do we think about building new insights, and how do we think about what that rollout looks like? And again, for us, there's a lot of intentionality that we want to put into how we create these insights, both subjectively and objectively, informing the way that we create them is going to be really paramount to our platform. The idea, though, is that we always want to lean on the side of giving more than less, because in our minds, if we can notify or provide context along the journey, that allows you all to give the subjective perspective that you have on your business as to whether an insight is actionable or not. So one of the things that even Ross was diving into is, was this insight helpful or not? That's the type of information that we want to tie into customizing or tailoring the experience for your organization. Again, a non-for-profit might look a lot different than an early stage company trying to 3x year over year. And those insights are going to be tailored towards what does that organization actually find most impactful. So again, we appreciate everyone going through the demo here of Insights. What we will share is that this is part 3 of our 4-part Blueprint Live series. Coming up next week is going to be a customer spotlight. We're going to be highlighting how Form Assembly maximizes their leadership meetings with Elate. We are working with Lou Desiderio, who former COO at Form Assembly. He's going to be walking us through what that process and experience will look like for them. Certainly not something you're going to want to miss as you think about operating rhythms and cadence going into 2025. But for today, Ross and I appreciate everyone taking the time. If there is interest in learning more about Insights, whether you're a prospect, a customer, or even just wanting to give feedback directionally on how we think about continuing to iterate on this feature, we'd love to connect. You can either reach out to Ross, myself directly. You can always visit golate.com. If you'd like to get a demo of the entirety of the platform from our team, we'd be happy to help. But again, thank you all for taking the time here today. We're looking forward to hearing from you all soon.